3 terrifying true stories of spring horrors that will haunt your nights. I never should have opened that door. The wind howled like a lost soul outside my window. Thick, heavy clouds rolled in, swallowing even the weak daylight. The shadows in my room grew longer, more sinister. My heart raced. Spring was supposed to bring new life, but with it came untold horror. Every day, I'd walk the same route to the park, the air crisp and fresh. I noticed flowers starting to bloom, a false sense of security. But the deeper I walked into that park, the more my gut twisted. Whispers floated through the branches, a chorus of secrets begging to be heard. Shadows seemed to flicker just beyond my vision. I shook it off as nothing, but unease settled in my bones. One afternoon, I found a tattered diary, wedged between 2 knotty roots. Curiosity pulled me to read it. Each page was soaked with fear, recounting unexplainable events. Footsteps in the grass when no one was around, laughter that chilled the spine, a pair of glaring eyes watching from the darkness. My skin crawled. I hastily stuffed it back, guilt clawing at me. As dusk fell, the air turned cold, pressing against my skin like a warning. I heard a crack of twigs snapping behind me. I froze. My heart thundered. I turned slowly, expecting to see a lost dog or perhaps a friend teasing me. But there was nothing. Just shadows. Thick, rolling shadows that seemed to move against the fading light. Then, the feeling hit me. Someone was watching. I spun around, and a flash of white crossed my line of sight. A figure, cloaked in darkness, barely illuminated by the last sliver of sunlight. A gasp escaped my lips, a sharp intake of cold air. The cloaked figure stood still, perfectly still, yet somehow absorbing every ounce of fear radiating from me. I stumbled back, breath quickening. I felt wind rush past me, colder than the crisp spring air, and then darkness. Silence settled like a weight on my chest. I backed away, every instinct screaming at me to run. Suddenly, the figure stepped forward, and a scream clawed at my throat. The door I had come through seconds before slammed shut, trapping me in this nightmare. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence that enveloped me felt unnatural, as if even the earth had decided to hold its breath. The cloaked figure remained motionless, giving nothing away, dark and all-consuming. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, a sinister percussion that matched the rhythm of my rising panic. My mind raced, concocting a million, hungry and alive. Then, the scream turned into laughter, a cacophony that echoed around me, filling the woods with terror and teasing any sense of escape. As I scrambled to my feet, the forest exploded in a whirlwind of shadows closing in from all sides. My entire existence paled in comparison to the darkness surrounding me. Just as I regained my footing and prepared to bolt again, I heard the girl's voice rise amidst the laughter. "You're one of us now!" In a blinding flash, darkness enveloped me once again, pulling me into its depths. The last thing I sensed was the weight of 1,000 gazes, piercing through the void, and then silence. I didn't awaken to the gentle caress of dawn, or the sweet sounds of nature. Instead, I lay on the ground, a chill seeping into my bones that felt unnatural. The suffocating silence had returned, pressuring my chest and pushing my heart to a frantic rhythm. As I opened my eyes, the pale light filtering through the trees revealed a disorienting landscape, twisted and contorted as if the very essence of reality had succumbed to madness. I pushed myself up, bracing against the rough forest floor. The air was thick, stifling, and my breath came out in shallow gasps. My limbs trembled, not from exhaustion, but from unnameable dread. I remembered the cloaked figure, the girl, and the laughter that echoed through the woods like a taunting memory. Where were they now? I glanced around, meeting the hollow stares of countless trees, their gnarled trunks twisting upward like skeletal fingers searching for the sky. They felt alive, secrets pulsing in their bark. Whispering voices threaded through the underbrush, too far away to understand but close enough to evoke a sense of paranoia. I could almost hear my name being called, fragmented and distorted, mingling with the whispers. Struggling to my feet, I felt the ground tremble beneath me, as if the world itself was becoming restless. I had to move, find a way out of this maddening place before the darkness caught up with me again. The oppressive atmosphere pushed me forward, deeper into the forest where the shadows clung to me like a shroud. As I pressed on, an uneasy feeling washed over me, thick and intangible, as if unseen eyes were tracking my every movement. A distant rustle caught my attention, something moving within the underbrush. Panic resurfaced, clawing at my throat, but my legs propelled me toward the sound. It was a faint whimper, almost human. Crouching low, I pushed through the dense foliage until I came upon a clearing. In the center, illuminated by a narrow shaft of light, lay a small boy, no older than 8. His features were drawn, eyes wide and glassy, staring into the void. His body shivered, tremors racking him like he was caught between realms. I knelt beside him, ready to grab his shoulders and shake him awake from whatever nightmare held him captive. But as I reached out, he turned his head slowly toward me, an uncanny smile spreading across his face. "They'll come for you, too," he murmured, his voice breaking. "You have to run before they know you're here." Who will come?" I demanded, a mixture of fear and concern igniting in my voice. The boy's eyes were wide with a strange knowing, the sparkle of sanity fading, replaced by something unspeakable. "The shadows, they play with the lost, and I think you're lost," he said, each word punctuated by another shiver that rushed through his small frame. "You have to go back." Before he could finish, the ground beneath us quaked violently, and the trees whispered in a frenzy. I heard a low, guttural growl emerging, sending a violent shiver through me that made me want to scream. The shadows around the clearing began to twist and writhe as if they possessed a will of their own. Without thinking, I backed away from the child, but he reached out with a feeble hand, still smiling, but the innocence had drained, replaced by something more sinister. "They've come for you," he whispered, voice cracking, "and they're hungry." Suddenly, darkness snatched him from view, and I stumbled backward, watching in horror as shadows erupted from the earth, enveloping his figure in a writhing mass. His laughter echoed in a fragmented sound that twisted into cries, wrapping around me like barbed wire, drawing blood with every second my heart raced. I turned, scrambling away from the horror unfolding in the clearing, the shadows snapping at my heels, hungry and relentless. As I sprinted through the trees, panic surged through me, fueling my desperate bid for escape. I had to find the edge of the forest, had to get to safety, but the shadows danced closer, an ever-looming threat that hung in the air like a noose. Just as I broke through the tree-line, ecstasy surged through me. I was almost free. But then the laughter returned, mingling with the whispers that echoed my name, seductive and demanding. "You should have never left." A chilling sensation gripped my heart as I turned to face the woods one last time. From the darkness, all the faces of those I thought I had left behind stared back at me, blinking in unison, their eyes glimmering with inky blackness. And then I heard the girl's voice, clear as day, cutting through the air with a dissonant harmony, "Now you're part of the game." Within that moment, the shadows lunged, swallowing the ground beneath me, and as the earth crumbled away, I plunged into a void of despair. I was consumed, gasping, my screams melding with the laughter that painted the night with unending terror. I realized too late, there was no escaping the darkness. It was all-consuming, and as I fell, the forest's laughter echoed in my ears, reminding me that once you enter, there is no way out. And then everything went black. The silence that followed was oppressive, a heavy blanketing of stillness that stretched far beyond my senses. Darkness enveloped me like a shroud, but it was not the comforting embrace of night. It was the suffocating grip of something ancient and unseen. I was adrift in a void, an all-consuming absence, where even sound seemed to tremble in fear of being devoured. Suddenly, I hit a solid surface, gritty and cold, knocking the breath from my lungs. I forced my eyes open, heart racing, but there was no light, no sense of direction. Panic clawed at my throat. I pushed against the ground, struggling to find my footing in this abyss. The air was stale, filled with a rancid odor that tickled my nostrils. It smelt of rot, of decay, and invisible fingers brushed against my skin, their touch sending icy tendrils down my spine. "Is anybody there?" My voice was swallowed by the void, echoing back as a mocking whisper. I took a tentative step forward, feeling the earth beneath me, a terrain laced with uneven bumps and what felt like remnants of lives long extinguished. With each step, I felt the pressure of 1,000 eyes, hidden just out of sight, scrutinizing my every move. I stopped, straining to listen, and the silence shattered. A rustling echoed in the distance, followed by a chorus of whispers, indistinct yet chilling, curling around me like smoke. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices rising into a fever pitch, some familiar and some alien. "You thought you could escape?" A voice hissed, slithering through the stillness, echoing the girl's ominous promise. I staggered back, fear coursing through my veins, feeling a primal urge to flee this wretched place. With wild desperation, I began to move cautiously, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet. Each step was agonizing, echoing in the darkness like a heartbeat, a heart that wasn't my own. The whispers morphed into laughter, a sound of glee that chilled me to the bone. They were taunting me, drawing me into depths I didn't dare explore. Then I saw a flicker of movement ahead, barely visible through the oppressive dark. I strained my eyes, catching a glimpse of a faint light pulsing like a dying star, beckoning me forward with an insidious allure. Driven by curiosity and dread, I approached, my heart thumping madly as I crossed the threshold of shadow and light. What lay beyond was not an escape but a vast, sunken chamber lined with grotesque carvings that twisted in the dimness. They depicted figures bound in anguish, their faces twisted in eternal agony, trapped in an eternal dance of despair. Oddly comforting, the light pulsed rhythmically in the center, revealing a pile of jagged stones that glinted like teeth in the gloom. "What is this place?" I whispered, mesmerized yet horrified. As I stepped closer, a shiver ran through me, and the laughter returned, echoing within the chamber's confines. "An O place for the lost, but a home for the hungry," came the voice again, more taunting than before. The stones glimmered, and suddenly they began to shift, revealing a hollow where something dark writhed, a flowing mass, part liquid and part shadow. As I recoiled, the shadow erupted, splitting apart with a howl that shook the very walls. Faces emerged from its depths, contorted in a rictus of agony and fury, their eyes wide and pleading one moment, vengeful the next. They reached toward me, mouths stretching open, but no sounds came forth, only the insatiable hunger that radiated from them like a heatwave. Deliberately, I stepped back, but the ground rumbled and trembled once more, and the figures lurched forward, their hands grasping desperately, as though they could drag me into that eternal torment. I turned, running back toward the shimmering light behind me, but it flickered, waning with every step I took. The walls began closing in, shadow and light battling in a grotesque dance, and I entered a frenzy, sprinting blindly through the darkness. The figures wailed, their cries echoing in my ears like knives tearing at my sanity. My breath turned ragged, the oppressive darkness threatening to drown me as I stumbled and fell. Then the laughter erupted all around me, drowning out the chaos, enveloping me in a cacophony of madness that made my skin crawl. It was everywhere, an insistent whisper that slithered beneath my skin. "You cannot escape," they taunted. "You belong to us." In one last desperate act, I clawed at the ground, trying to dig myself away, praying for a small speck of light. And just as I felt my fingers further crack against the stony surface, the laughter ceased, plunging me into a dreadful silence, thick and deafening. And then, out of the void, a voice broke through, smooth and seductive. "There's always room for one more." Before I could react, the ground opened beneath me, and I fell, surrounded by darkness, screaming into the endless void as everything around me twisted into a horrifying whirlpool of despair. I landed with a bone-jarring thud, the impact silencing the chaos of my thoughts. Dazed, I lay sprawled on a cold, uneven floor, my mind racing to comprehend my surroundings. The air was thick and heavy, tinged with a metallic sense of freshness that felt deceptive amidst the decay. I pushed myself up, blinking against a dull glow that limned the edges of my vision, tempting me with its semblance of safety. What lay around me was a horrific parody of a living room, though it had been twisted beyond recognition. Once familiar furniture lay strewn about, warped and decayed, like remnants of a long-forgotten tragedy. A moth-eaten armchair sat atop a thick layer of dust, while a shattered table leaned precariously, its surface marred by deep scratches that traced chaotic patterns. And in the corner beyond the grotesque hearth, missing its fireplace, a cracked mirror caught the shifting light. I moved toward it, drawn in by an impulse I couldn't quite understand, the light flickering and shifting, reflecting shadowy movements behind me. As I peered into the glass, I braced myself. Instead of my own reflection, I saw a different room, similar yet disturbingly askew, filled with shadowy forms that writhed and twisted, distant echoes of the echoes I had already encountered. My breath quickened as I felt panic claw at my insides. What was this place? Suddenly there was a commotion behind me, a rustling like dry leaves intertwined with muted whispers. I whirled around, heart thudding loudly, but all I saw were swirling shadows, retreating into darker corners as if I had surprised them. The sense of dread enveloped me anew, a slow creeping realization that whatever haunted this space was still lurking nearby, watching with relentless hunger. The air grew colder, thick with the chilling pressure of unseen eyes. I took a tentative step forward, ready to investigate when, with a grunt, the armchair let out a creaking sigh, almost like a breath. The hairs on my neck bristled, and I stumbled backward, heart racing. I fought the urge to scream, knowing it would likely attract their attention, their insatiable hunger for fear. Is anyone there? I squeaked, my voice barely above a whisper. The response was immediate, the sound of laughter bubbling forth, a low and sinister sound that transformed the air around me into a web of self-doubt and madness. The lost sheep finally awakens. It was the same seductive voice from before, wrapping around me like a silken noose. "You've fallen into our sanctuary, a feast made up of fear, memories, and delicious despair." I staggered to my feet, searching for a way out. Beyond the broken furniture, the warped walls seemed to pulse, the very structure alive with anticipation. I ran toward a doorway, its outline warped, a distorted passage that led back into the darkness of the void, but a light shimmered at the edge, pulse after pulse. As I reached the threshold, a figure stepped forward from an inky corner, a silhouette that undulated like smoke. I squinted, desperation fueling my urge to discern its shape. It was a child, their hair wild and unkempt, skin pale and sunken, a smile too wide for a human face. "Stay with us," the child crooned, tilting their head in an unsettling way. "We play every night. We feast on the fear of the living, and we grow ever stronger." With a scream lodged in my throat, I bolted back into the adjoining room. The laughter echoed around me as the air thickened, a malevolent force closing in, wrapping my mind in suffocating despair. The mirror. I could see fragments of another reality reflected there, a home where everything was whole and bright, shining against the encroaching shadow. Just as I reached for it, the shadows surged forward, a tide of disembodied voices reverberating in my ears. You cannot go back. You belong with us now. I pushed against the glass, my fingertips grazing its cold surface, but it rippled like liquid, mocking my desperate hope. Suddenly, all at once, the laughter ceased, replaced by a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkness. A palpable wave of terror crashed over me. As I felt the shadows converge, ready to engulf me, the child stepped through the threshold, smirking, eyes gleaming with a haunting hunger. It's time for the feast, my dear. We've all been waiting for you. And as the shadows swallowed the room, the last reflection I caught in the mirror was not my own, but a wicked grin, my own, twisted and malevolent, merged with the darkness that hungered for my soul. The darkness closed in like a vice, squeezing the breath from my lungs as I fought against the shadows gripping my legs, pulling me deeper into their suffocating embrace. My heart raced, a frantic drum echoing in my ears as I felt a chill seep through my bones. The child's laughter reverberated around me, a symphony of cruel delight that filled every corner of the twisted room. Join us! Join us! The chorus of voices rose, swirling around me, rising and falling like a deranged lullaby. Each syllable dripped with a sickening sweetness that frayed at the edges of my sanity, tugging me toward a terrible reality I couldn't comprehend. Instinctively, I turned my back on the mirror, desperate to escape its deceptive reflection. I staggered into the shadows behind me, chest heaving in frantic breaths, adrenaline surging through my veins. The atmosphere shifted, ostensibly welcoming, whispering promises of belonging in muted tones. Yet, the chill stayed, gnawing at the remnants of my courage. There was no trace of the once vibrant living room, no comfort in the space that had twisted into something grotesque. The walls pulsated rhythmically, like a monster's heartbeat, each thump a reminder that I was deep within its lair. The floor beneath my feet felt alive, vibrating under pressure, shifting as though the very structure had lain in wait for my intrusion. I pressed forward, shuffling through an archway leading to a hallway obscured by a thick fog. Shapes danced in the mist, ephemeral forms that flickered at the corner of my vision, teasing the edges of my fear. Shadows twisted. I swore I could see faces, anguished expressions slipping away right before recognition sank in. They grieved for what they had lost, trapped in this nightmarish limbo. Suddenly, a crimson light illuminated the corridor ahead, the pulsing glow far too vivid and inviting against the darkness. It felt like a beacon, an escape route, but it could also be a trap. Pushing logic aside, I stumbled towards it, drawn by an overwhelming compulsion that beckoned me to unveil the source. The glow materialized from a door at the end of the hall, its edges cracking like the fragile shell of a forgotten egg. My heartbeat echoed loudly in the silence, a thunderous rhythm that seemed to awaken something deeper within the building. As I fumbled for the doorknob, the memories of laughter thickened, shifting from a low hum to a resonating roar, enveloping me with haunting melodies that clawed at my mind. Touching the doorknob was like searing fire, an electric jolt sparking through my fingertips. With a twisted push, the door swung open, and I was met not with a room, but a horrible reflection of my own existence, a mirror universe, where I existed as a hollow spirit joined with the shadows around me. I stood there, gazing into my glassy-eyed doppelganger, observing as it mirrored my own horrified expression. While my mouth moved in silent screams, the creature behind the glass displayed a delightfully wicked grin, an embodiment of my fears and regrets storming to life. Then, the ghastly chatters returned, barely above a whisper, but escalating with urgency. Look who's home. Your own reflection has waited endlessly for you, yearning to take your place. It's a feast, my dear. Join us. Consume the memories we offer. Taste the sweet fear. Suddenly, drawing back, I stumbled away from the mirror's edge, frantic to escape the horrifying allure. The suffocating laughter morphed, branching out into sinister sobs that infected the air like a plague. I felt a presence behind me, a cold rush like fingers grazing my spine, creeping down with menacing intent. Gritting my teeth, I spun around to face the darkness once more, aware that the shadows had promised me a terrible fate from the moment I stepped inside this cursed space. The child had returned, their eyes glowing with a malevolent hunger, standing but mere inches away. "You don't have to run," they cooed, their voice a dissonant melody against the wailing shadows around us. "All you need is to surrender. The feast is prepared, and you will finally belong." Before I could retort, the shadows surged again, enveloping the child as they launched forward with a sudden chill, arms outstretched. Their smile widened, revealing rows of jagged teeth impossibly sharp. I gasped, stumbling, the edge of sanity fraying in a world where reality had warped into an unspeakable horror, and just as I turned to flee, the shadows coalesced into a solid form, blocking my path, grinning, taunting. The laughter escalated into a desperate cacophony, a chorus of voices filled with a hollow hunger that threatened to swallow me whole. "Join us! Join us!" they cried in unison, as the walls began to vibrate alongside them, giving a rhythm to their chant. In that frantic moment, as their claws reached out for me, I noticed a glimmer in the corner of my eye, the reflection of the mirror singing with brighter light, revealing an opening through the chaos, perhaps a pathway back to reality or to another trap. I reached out, yearning for escape, when suddenly, the doppelganger inside the mirror reached back, pulling me toward it with an iron grip. I screamed in anguished overture, swallowed by the laughter and the shadows. And then, all at once, the light shattered, plunging me into a darkness far deeper than before, followed by the haunting realization that I no longer knew which way was forward or backward. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence as I found myself completely encompassed by an unyielding darkness. All I could feel was the cold, damp ground beneath me, each heartbeat noticeable, each breath labored and shallow. The laughter that had once filled the void had morphed into a soft, pulsating thrum, like the distant echo of a heartbeat reverberating in my skull. Panic surged through me as I blinked against the gloom, attempting to regain a semblance of focus. I felt exposed, vulnerably a raw nerve in a world of shadows. My pulse raced as I dragged myself back to my feet, taking a shaky step forward. The moment my foot pressed against the ground, I heard it, a soft whisper chafing at the edges of my consciousness. "Come play, where shadows dance and lost souls linger." The voice licked at my ears like a candle's flickering flame, both inviting and menacing. It echoed with familiar tones, hinting at forgotten childhood memories that had shifted into something far more sinister. A part of me, vague and desperate, craved connection, while another part screamed to flee, to rip away from whatever horror lingered unseen. I pressed against the wall to my right, seeking the reassurance of solid ground as a sense of dread gripped my throat. There was a texture I hadn't noticed before, something slick and pulpy beneath my fingers. I recoiled, swiping my palm against my pants, the faint imagery of flesh appearing in my mind, human skin stretched across the wall, absorbing the sorrow like a sponge. I felt the bile rise in my throat, threatening to spill as I tore my gaze from the grotesque sight. Just then, a shrill giggle echoed from somewhere deep within the blackness, sending shards of ice racing down my spine. "Don't be afraid," it sang, threadbare with mirth. "We're all friends here." The suffocation of fear mingled with the horrifying realization that I was not alone. I wasn't simply lost in darkness. Something insidious shared this realm with me. The laughter morphed into a cackle, scratching at the edges of my mind, tempting me to abandon all reason. I stumbled forward, the sound of my own gasp swallowed entirely by the all-consuming shadow. Suddenly, I was met with a sensation of tugging at my clothes, like small hands grasping desperately for recognition. I felt the weight of despair drape over me as those hands tightened their grip. "Stay with us," they purred. I could hear the innocence interlaced with an insatiable hunger. A jolt of courage compelled me to wrench free, surging into a sprint. "No! Leave me alone!" my voice echoed, desperate and trembling. As I barreled forward, I felt the air shift, the shadows thickening in retaliation. The oppressive laughter pulsed rhythmic and thunderous, drowning every coherent thought in its embrace. Through the thick fog, I noticed a weak, flickering flame dancing in defiance to the shadows surrounding it. I dashed toward it, a fleeting hope coursing through my limbs. Hope. The thought became a soft prayer as I reached for the light, my fingers brushing against the edge of an object, solid and alive with energy. It was a lantern, its light sputtering and struggling against the encroaching darkness. I grasped it with both hands, forcing the light to grow brighter, illuminating the hallway before me. Strange silhouettes twisted at the edges of the illumination, whispering my name, voices intertwining with an intoxicating familiarity. "Remember us? Remember the games?" Your laughter energized us. The words spilled forth like venom, and an immediate chill cascaded through my chest. I fumbled with the lantern, thrusting it into the sinister void. The shadows writhed, recoiling from the light as if it scorched their very essence. My heart raced. This flicker of hope, this tiny flame, felt like the last remnants of my sanity. And then, from that same dark heart, a shadow surged forward, tangible and powerful, shattering the fragile barrier of light. It collapsed around me in a suffocating blanket of despair, a tangible darkness woven with familiar voices that wrapped around my legs once more. The child emerged within the gathering gloom, eyes wide and manic with joy. "Don't you see? You can't escape. You're one of us now. We've been waiting for your return." Their voice rang eerily, as laughter spilled from their lips, celebratory, twisted delight tinged with agony. With barely a moment to register my own deepening horror, the ground below began to tremble, a tremor morphing into an unyielding quake, shaking the very foundation of this nightmare. I felt my legs buckle as the shadows erupted, claws of darkness reaching and grasping, dragging me into a whirlpool of despair. In that moment, the last series of thoughts blinked through my mind, a final shred of clarity amidst the chaos. I felt the lantern slip from my fingers, extinguishing in a puff of darkness, leaving me at the mercy of the suffocating shadows. Then I screamed, the sound a raw echo into the void, as the shadows enveloped me completely. And as it enveloped me, I realized a chilling truth. The laughter had subsided, replaced with something quieter, an agonizing whisper that promised something far worse. "Welcome home, forever." The darkness pulled me into its arms, and the last thing I saw was the flickering remnants of a shadow-filled doorway whispering secrets of despair. Then there was nothing, not even laughter. I awakened in a damp, narrow chamber, the air heavy with an acrid scent that stung my nostrils. Light poured in through a crack above, but it was the disconcerting sound that captured my attention, a low, rhythmic thud resonating through the walls, like a funeral drum, relentless and ominous. Shadows shifted in the corners, fleeting glimpses of something watching, waiting. As I gathered myself off the ground, I noticed a chilling chill clinging to my skin, the remnants of something wet pooling beneath me. My fingers brushed against the surface, slick and gelatinous. Leaning closer, I gasped, the remnants of flickering memories reigniting flashes of horror in my mind. Bones, small bones, scattered like broken dreams beneath a fresh layer of flesh, squirming and pulsing as if life still clung to them. Against the far wall, illuminated by the dim, stray beam of light, a collection of dolls sat, their glassy eyes wide and unblinking, each a perfect replica of the youthful faces I once knew. Their smiles were uncomfortably bright, painted over fractured features, innocent yet filled with malice. A silence wrapped around me, thick and choking, as if the air itself was anticipating what would emerge from the shadows. Moving cautiously towards them, I felt the weight of their gaze. It was as if they were silently accusing me of something. My breath quickened as I noticed what each one clutched, a tiny, rugged bit of fabric that bore unsettling familiarity. It was a piece of clothing worn by each of my long-lost companions, all of whom I had thought safe, far from this encroaching darkness. My heart raced, each beat sounding a grim reminder of the bonds once cherished, now tainted by terror. "Come join us," a whisper drifted through the air, dripping with enticing malice, blending eerily with the drumming that continued pounding like buried hearts. "We missed you." Retracting my hand, I moved backward, the shadows unexpectedly swarming in to encase my feet, pulling intermittently towards a gaping maw behind the dolls, a void that beckoned with promises of reunion. Insidious whispers drifted in the air like smoke, echoing haunting echoes of laughter and heartbreak. The dolls began to sway, their corded limbs moved on their own, twisting in unnatural ways to draw my gaze further into the recesses of the room. "Don't leave us again," they implored, their voices now a chorus of the damned, clashing with those once light-hearted giggles. "You belong with us forever." Suddenly, their glassy eyes flickered with life, illuminating beneath a shroud of shadow, revealing tiny teeth bared in sadistic grins. The room shook with a supernatural force, and I felt the walls closing around me, overwhelmingly tight, every surface pulsing with the beat of whatever lay entombed within. The drumming crescendoed, enveloping me as a radiant fissure appeared within the shadows, pulling memories forward with ferocity. I struggled to hold back the memories, the games of tag in the sun, laughter that once cascaded like diamonds through our lives, but everything twisted, warped, and evolved into visceral horror. And then, within the searing chaos, I felt the ground shatter beneath me as the shadows coiled tighter, tightening up against my throat, thwarting my escape. A vision burst forth like a firework. I saw fleeting images of my friends twisted and tormented, shadows devouring their innocent laughter, all the joy drained away, leaving mere husks. "Help us!" Their voices broke through the shadows like cracks in glass, carried on the night air, distorted and wide-eyed. "They'll take you too. The game will never end." In that moment, I knew they were no longer alive. Each haunted face belonged to a soul trapped in a game far darker than I could comprehend. The murmur grew louder, until their cries melded with my screams, creating a cacophony that echoed off the cavernous walls. "Stay with us," a chorus chanted as a wild surge of energy pulled and pushed against me, deeper into the darkness. And then, just as hopelessness threatened to engulf me, I remembered the lantern, a radiance that had dissipated far too easily. My desperate search paused, the remnants of a flickering flame still embers in my mind. I willed those embers into life. "No! I want to join you," I shouted into the void, feeling my voice rise and swell as I spun around, searching for something, anything that could rekindle the fading light. To my shock, the doll's laughter morphed into screams, howling in dismay as wisps of light began to flicker into existence. Shadows coiled back, hissing as the light expanded, curling around me in tendrils of warmth. But amidst the chaos, a new thudding sound emerged, deeper, heavier, and it sent a wave of terror washing over me. A figure, colossal and twisted, segmented like a puppet in a malevolent show, emerged from the darkness, a grotesque mockery of life shrouded in shadows. Its eyes bore the glow of the lantern amidst the darkness, controlling the remnants of forgotten souls, drew closer, each footfall echoing an inevitable conclusion. And as I caught that final glimpse of my friends, forever trapped in agony, the cavern shuddered violently, the walls bleeding despair and shadows, as the laughter crescendoed one last time, a sinister song welcoming me home. As the figure loomed closer, the question hung in the air like a noose. Would I become the next puppet in their eternal game? Then everything collapsed around me, and just before the darkness consumed all, I realized only echoes remained, but the light flickered somewhere beyond. And I was drawn toward it, closer, dangerously close. The flickering light drew me in like a moth to a flame, enveloping me with the promise of safety, while the shadows hissed, and gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I stumbled forward, my heart racing, pushing against the suffocating darkness. With each step, the remnants of my friends echoed in my mind a relentless chorus of agony that mingled with the sinister laughter echoing from the dolls. Their haunting song twisted my will, attempting to reclaim what was already lost. As I ventured deeper into the flickering glow, reality contorted. The light danced just beyond reach, teasing and taunting, oscillating with a rhythm that echoed the sinister drumming. I could hear faint whispers mingling with the distorted laughter, as if the walls themselves had voices of their own, beckoning me to stay, to succumb to the despair that lurked at my heels. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath me. A massive crack erupted in the floor, and with it came a rancid stench, a deep, rotting reek that clawed at my throat. I staggered back, but it was too late. From the fissure, skeletal hands erupted, grasping at my ankles, their bony fingers cold and clammy. They pulled me down as I shrieked in horror, a desperation igniting a primal instinct to escape. No. "Let me go!" I screamed, thrashing in a futile attempt to break free from their grasp. The hands pulled tighter, and a grotesque visage began to form from the shadows pooling around the chasma face that seemed to echo the features of those now trapped within the dolls. Eyes wide with torment, mouths stretched into silent screams. The darkness seeped into my veins, dragging me closer to the abyss. I clawed at the ground, my nails scraping raw against the stone floor, desperately searching for anything to pull myself back. Suddenly, I clutched something, a jagged shard of bone, slick with moisture. In an instinctual burst of rage and fear, I drove it into the hands trying to claim me, and they recoiled with agonizing wails that reverberated through the chamber. With a guttural roar, the hands released their grip, dragging me away from the edge of the collapsing abyss. I tumbled backward, landing hard against the unforgiving stone. My breath came in ragged gasps as I scrambled to my feet, the flickering light now directly in front of me, no longer a distant tease. But it revealed much more than warmth and safety. I gasped, looking around as the dimness receded, and the horrific truth danced in the periphery of the light. I was in a vast hall lined with mirrors, distorted reflections of myself stretched impossibly thin, twisted in terror. But they weren't just reflections. They were echoes of those who had come before me, lost souls forever trapped within this labyrinth of torment. Each mirror flickered with both pain and bewilderment, eyes wide open in silent screams that echoed just beyond the barrier of glass. As I edged closer to one of the mirrors, a familiar face emerged through shimmering glass, a face of one I had loved and lost. My heart sank when I recognized her, my sister, trapped in a perpetual state of longing, her mouth moving silently, pleading for something I could not decipher. "Help me," she mouthed, the words rendered inaudible by the glass separating us, her features contorted in despair. It ignited a fierce urgency within me, but the laughter returned, louder, more commanding. I turned to flee, but the mirrors began to shimmer more violently, slashing about like angry waves. I was caught in a cyclone of memories. Each reflection imprisoned fragmented glimpses of love, loss, laughter before they warped horrifically, revealing the tortured realities hidden beneath their facades. One image captured my attention, another reflection of my sister, but this time she was not alone. Flanking her were all my friends, held captive in the mirrors, like insidious trophies of a malevolent game. Their features, too, twisted in pain as they reached out toward me, their hands stretching through glass barriers. "Don't leave us," they cried, their voices unified in frantic urgency, a cacophony that drummed in my ears, blending into the ominous thud that still pulsated through the cavern. One delicate finger pressed against the glass, the image rippling violently, distorting her face into something inhuman. It was shifting, pulling into the malevolent form that had chased me through the shadows, and evil sophistication that seemed to revel in my horror. And as the mirror shattered, the sound splintered the air like glass shards raining down around me, I was left to face what I feared most. I stumbled backward, unable to grasp at the abrupt shift in reality, watching helplessly as the figures emerged from the shards. They extended hollow hands towards me, merging with the shadows swirling in a fiendish dance, each face taking form as they melded into a grotesque parody of familiarity. "Join us," they called, their voices weaving a hypnotic lull, their smiles stretching impossibly wide. "You were always meant to be here." I felt the walls closing in again, the crushing weight rerouting my panic into sheer terror. My sanity teetered on the edge, and I knew instinctively one choice would seal my fate. As I looked back at the mirror, at my sister desperately clawing at the glass, a chilling realization dawned: I couldn't choose. I was already trapped in this game, a mere player in a horror beyond comprehension, a flesh-and-blood pawn for forces far darker than I could fathom. With a final surge of desperation, I lunged toward the remaining fragments of light, extending my fingers as the twisted figures closed it around me, laughing, and just before they enveloped me, I caught a glimpse of the lantern's flame flicker again, the last glimmer of hope scurrying away into the shadows. My heart dropped as I felt the unmistakable sensation of being woven into their chaotic embrace, and in that fragmented moment of clarity, it dawned on me, this was not the end. The game was only just beginning. I woke again, not as I expected in a fitting light of dawn, or the cool embrace of night, but in a damp, echoing chamber filled with the smell of old earth and rot. The cold air bit at my exposed skin, sharp and demanding. As I pushed myself off the ground, something crinkled beneath my fingers, paper, oddly familiar. I grabbed it and opened the pages, my heart sinking as I beheld the words scrawled across my diary, the one I thought lost ages ago. Shaky handwriting detailed days spent in that haunted park, the strange encounters, the laughter that haunted Myatt. There were entries that hadn't come from my hand, words of longing and despair mixing with my thoughts. I shuddered, flipping through pages until I suddenly froze. There, an entry dated just a month ago, inked darkly as if the writer's fury had spilled over. "I can feel them watching, waiting for me. The shadows know me by name." My breath hitched as I realized that the handwriting had transformed midway through, a fluid transition from my own quavering scrawl to something sinister, more deliberate. "Come join us, dear brother, the game never ends." That chilling voice echoed in my ear, a distant yet intimate whisper, threading through the air like an insidious melody. Suddenly I understood. The voice belonged to my sister. Somehow, she had fallen into this void, and was crying out to me, acquiring the darkness that now lingered in my mind. And with that realization came an insatiable hunger gnawing at my insides, an urge I didn't comprehend. I could feel myself slipping, sliding into her world where shadows danced and darkness thrived. My limbs felt heavy, as if each movement pulled me toward a twisted reunion. I felt the pull of the shadow so familiar, so intoxicating, and I wrestled to regain my mind. As I searched the rest of the chamber, my heart raced further as I discovered the hundreds of mirrors that lined the walls, shimmering with dark reflections. In each pane, distorted images of those I had known blinked back at me, trapped in an endless cycle of despair, to friends I thought lost, each reflection a sinister reminder of their fates. They were lost souls ensnared, forever crying out for salvation just as much as I was. But it dawned on me like icy water, they weren't just trapped. They were puppets bound to this abhorrent game, feeding its insatiable hunger. Suddenly, a chilling laughter filled the air, not the playful giggle of the figures, but a cacophony of deep voices melding into one suffocating resonance. "Welcome home. You've joined our ranks," they cried, and faint memories flooded my mind, blurred and twisted, overlapping. I could feel them, all their fears, all their hatred, wrapping around me like chains. Desperate, I lunged towards the mirrors, reaching for my sister's face in fragmented glass, her perfect smile twisted into something monstrous. "Stay! Help us!" she pleaded, the echo of her voice slicing through the shadows clinging to my heart. But before I could answer, a blinding light erupted from the center of the chamber, illuminating everything. The darkness recoiled, and the laughter sucked in with it, cloaking the world in a dreadful twilight. "Don't leave us!" echoed voices wrapped in despair, while the flickering light began to fade, retreating back toward the shadows. I stumbled forward, chasing the dwindling hope, compelled by the memories that filled my mind, the games in the park, laughter under sunny skies now enveloped in bitter cold. But I resisted, fighting against the tide threatening to pull me under. Then, a rude awakening washed over me. I was becoming part of that darkness. I could sense it, the last tether of my humanity waning as something inside me clawed and begged to give in, whispering lies that freedom lay in joining them. I felt the desperate yearning from the trapped souls. "Me friends," my sister meld into a singular voice echoing through the halls of my mind. "You belong with us forever." And then, the weight of horrifying truth settled heavily in my stomach. The darkness was not just a mere haunt. It was part of who I was becoming, an entity feeding on the fear and despair of restless souls, forever seeking companionship in torment. I could feel their anguish blending with my own, as the final echoes of laughter faded into a haunting silence. In a moment of paradoxical clarity, I realized my fate was not yet sealed. A single breakthrough emerged from the depths of chaos. I had fragments of light, the radiant warmth lasting only seconds before darkness clawed it away. As I focused hard on the flickering hearts of my friends reflected in the shards, I finally grasped their hands. Yes, all of us together could do more. I stared deep into the mirror that showed my family, their eyes wide with a promise, a hope that radiated deep within. All at once, a rush of determination surged forward, forcing back the shadows that sought to engulf me. I knew what I had to do. No longer would I be the pawn. Instead, I would become the player determined to escape this dark game. Gathering all my strength, I screamed my refusal, the words tumbling forth in a flood of energy that rippled through the air. "I want go back. I want become part of you." In that moment, the mirrors began to crack, spiderwebs of light spreading across their surfaces as they fractured under the force of my proclamation. The laughter turned to furious shrieks, a cacophony warning of my impending release. The shadows recoiled, dissipating into the air around me as the light within burst forth, engulfing the chamber in a radiance that reverberated against my skin. I grasped at the echoes that flickered beyond the shards, amplifying my will until the cacophony of tortured laughter merged into unearthly wails. I was ascending back, caught between the roar of shadows, shaking their hold until suddenly I stood outside, lungs burning in twilight's embrace, facing the stark reality of the park once again. But as I took my first breath, something struck me with ferocity, a realization that churned deep. The night had returned, deeper than ever before, the air itself thick with darkness, as I caught sight of a familiar figure standing just outside the park. A girl with wild hair and glinting eyes wide with malevolent delight. She smiled, stretching her mouth wide, pointed teeth glistening under the moonlight. "Now you know," she cooed, voice rich yet chilling, a reminder of all I had lost. I turned back towards the park, feeling the shadows stir behind me, drawn to the beckoning pull of the darkness, realizing too late how insidious it truly was. And even though I had escaped the clutches of despair, I understood that the horror wasn't just within those twisted depths. It lingered within me, alive, whispering sweet promises of a return as I took hesitant steps forward, drawn back into the game once more. And as I walked away, I heard faint echoes resound through the trees, the laughter of those who never escaped, mingling with the darkness that slipped effortlessly back into the depths of my heart. "You'll come back," it whispered sweetly, and I knew I was forever marked.